When a speaking corpse identified someone as their murderer, the defense team usually had little option but to call into question the judgment and professionalism of the reviver and dig deep for procedural irregularities. As a result, the paperwork for each case felt like a minefield. On Jonah's monitor was footage from his most recent revival, the paperwork for which he'd yet to complete. The screen showed the image of a dead man lying in a pool of his own blood. A 50-year-old Polish immigrant called Piotr Zales, whose packaging firm had taken only 6 years to grow from nothing to a $10 million business. He had been found dead in his home, his wife out of town. He'd been shot once in the torso and twice in the head. It was the kind of injury that often made revival impractical. With Zales, however, the damage to the brain, although fatal, had been relatively slight. The estimated revival chance had been low, but sufficient to warrant the attempt. If the killer had used a larger caliber gun or hollow point ammunition, the chances would have been non-existent. Jonah played the footage, speeding past the initial stages. Jonah entering frame, taking the man's hand. A 43-minute period of apparent inactivity, the man's chest finally moving as revival was achieved and the lungs filled with air. To those outside the field, that 43-minute period seemed like the easy part. To the reviver, of course, it was where most of the work happened. It had been a tough one, but that was the problem with Jonah Miller. He could bring the tough ones back, better than almost anyone. So inevitably, he had to keep on doing it. He let the footage play. The eyes of the corpse had been open, but the eyes played no role in revival. The dead couldn't see, couldn't even move beyond the basic mechanisms of speech, lungs, jaw, tongue. The eyes, staring blankly out past the camera, gave the dead man the appearance of deep despair. "Piotr," said Jonah in the recording. "My name is Jonah Miller. Can you hear me?"
"Yes,"
said Piotr Zales. "Do you know what happened to you?" asked Jonah, treading with care. The majority of revived subjects took a few moments to adjust, to realize that they were dead, but Zales knew exactly what was happening. And he knew who had killed him.
"My fucking idiot brother-in-law shot me,"
said the corpse. His speech was typical of revived subjects, a slow, throaty whisper punctuated by deep inhalations every dozen or so words. His voice was gently accented and underpinned with obvious anger.
"He shot me in the back, then mocked me as he came to finish it. I was face down, but he wanted me to know it was him. So he turned me over. Idiot. I saw him. I watched the greed in his eyes as he pulled the trigger. I like to see how he looks when he hears this."
Jonah paused the footage. Piotr Zales had stayed lucid for a further 8 minutes of unambiguous testimony, far longer than expected. Yet even with such an open and shut case, the amount of paperwork was ridiculous. It had always been bad. But recently, things had started to get much worse. Revival had first emerged almost 14 years earlier. The ability to talk to the recently deceased, the audible responses coming from the dead's own lips. Why it had emerged and what it really was were mysteries that had resisted years of intensive research. Yet while the research had failed to explain the origin of revival, it had instead provided a foundation for its use as a forensic tool. It was established that a reviver had a close emotional link to the dead subject during revival, one that made it clear when the subject was telling the truth. You didn't just get testimony from the dead. You knew when they lied or were evasive, and the questioning could establish the facts with absolute certainty. But you had to be quick. Once you'd brought a subject back, the revival might only last a couple of minutes, and once it was over, that was all you got. It was impossible to revive the same subject twice. Its use in courtrooms around the world had rapidly become a cornerstone of the justice system. Public opinion, initially uneasy with the process, was mostly won over by the sheer weight of success. Mostly. Resistance to the technique had been led by the afterlifers, an uneasy affiliation of